Welcome back, guys, to Jarrett the Journeyman. Today, we're going to start a series on how to do motor calculations. There's 6 steps to these motor calculations, and today we'll go through the first step, a real simple step on finding the FLA of the motor, and then from that, you start building your motor calculations off of that. So let's get started. This is going to be a 6-part series. So we'll start off with the first step today. Let me get this opened up. There we go. So first thing we need to do is get your code book out and go to Article 430, Motors, Motor Circuits, and Controllers. And I'll help you highlight some stuff that will help you get through your Journeyman's test and your Master's test on that. So to start off with, let's get this laser out. Today we'll be finding the full load current of the motor. Now there's 5 other steps behind that one. So the next one would be determine the overload protection of the motor. And remember that the overload protection is the heaters, not the not the overcurrent protection. It's the overload protection. Number 3 is finding the size of the branch circuit conductors. And if you look over here, if we can imagine this being the motor, this being the heaters within the motor, this right here is your branch circuit conductors between your MCC and your motor. And then number 5 is the feeder coming from like a disconnect or a main being fed to the MCC. So you got 1 step, 2, they're not steps, they're problems you have to solve. 1 problem, 2nd problem, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. And those numbers right there correspond with these right here. But today, what we're doing is we're going back to 430, 248, 250, back there to show you guys where the FLC is. Also, guys, when you see this FLC, because they use FLC and FLA, the only time you use FLA is determining your overload. But a quick cheat or reminder on where you need to go. If you see FLC, full load current, think of that as full load code. Full load code. And all that's doing is telling you, hey, I need to go look in the code book back in 430, 248, 249, 250, depending. But FLC, when you see that C right there, just trigger your head and just go to the code. When it's FLA, and that's in a future video, but FLA is when what you use to determine the overload. So let's get on with finding the full load current. And what you'll see on a test is what is the FLC of a 7.5 horsepower, 480 volt, 3-phase motor with a 1.15 service factor. So right again, FLC, that tells you you're looking in your code book. So let's open up our code books to 430.248. And then we're going to open it up to 430.250. But let's start with 230.248. Guys, this is what you'll see mainly on your Journeyman's test. They'll be asking about a single-phase AC motor. So this is the table you need to go to. So go ahead and highlight that table. Right there, I'd highlight table 230.248 and single-phase AC motors. Now, when we come down to this table, on the left-hand side, you'll see the horsepower of the motors. And then you'll see voltages across there. Now, if you read this, the currents listed shall be permitted for a system voltage ranging from 110 to 220. So that's why they're giving you 115. So some people call it 110 volts. Some people call it 120 volts. You use the 115. And then 220 to 240, That's why they give you the 230. Kind of go back and forth. So if you see something 220 or 240, you go to 230, use this column. 110 to 120, you use the 115 volts. Now, with that said, you look over here and you look at the horsepower of the single phase AC motor, and say you have something at 208 volts. So you have a half horse at 208 volts. So you find the horsepower, half horsepower, come all the way across to 208 volts, and that is 5.4 amps is how you read that. So all you got to do is take the horsepower. First off, we got to determine single phase AC. Horsepower, come down. I think we did half horsepower at 208, come across 5.4 amps. So everything is in amperage. So remember, currents in amperage. So remember, if you forget, there it is right there. Now let's go to 430.250. This table is the same thing, but I would highlight table 230.250, three-phase AC motors. And what you're going to use is you're going to use this portion of the table right here from 2300 over this way. Unless you see something about synchronized type unity power factor amperes. You won't see that in your Journeyman's test. I never saw it on my Texas Masters test. So you're using this portion of the table right there. And it reads the same thing. You read the horsepower on the left-hand side, and then your voltage. And this is for induction type squirrel cage and wound rotor motors. And this is, again, this is the amperage on that. So, but what I want you to take a look at is, where's it at? They don't have it on this one. Let's scratch that. Same thing. Your 480 volt is your 460. 230 is 240, 220. 115 is 110, 120. 200 volts, never seen it. 208 volts, they'll call it out directly. So 575 volts, never have had to calculate for that. But that's where you guys find the FLC of a motor. Now, there's also tables back there, and I'm just shooting off the hip. You've got 430, 249. I believe that's for, I think they call it two-phase motors. We won't ever use that table, and if you go past this table right here in your book, 430.251, I believe, is a polyphase motor. Won't use that. Now you may use, I believe it may be 430.247, and that's DC motors. So if you have a question on your test that's asking you about DC motors, that's the table you use. You don't use any of these that I just showed you. So back to our question, what is the FLC of a 7.5 horsepower, 480 volt three-phase motor with a 1.15 service factor? Guys, during your test, they love to throw all kinds of extra information in there that you don't need. So when we look at this, all we're looking for is FLC. So we know full load code, 7.5 horsepower, 480 volts, three-phase. So let's go down here. And let me see if I can get us a little bigger. There we go. 7.5 horsepower, three-phase, 7.5 horsepower, and we had what, 48 volts, 480 volts. I'm sorry, 480 volts. We come across, and your answer would be 11 right there. Right there's your answer, guys. That's how easy it is for the first step in this process right here. Let me get you back to these steps. So right here, this is very important on learning how to find that, because we take this and build these right here. Guys, thank you for joining me today. This is a quick little intro to motors. We will be continuing. This is one of 6. And if you guys are having any problems with that, drop me a comment below. I'll help you out. And another suggestion I have for you is memorize this right here and this right here. And that will get you through all of your motors. Now, there are some blank pages within the codebook that this information could get put in the codebook. I'm not telling you not to, but I'm not telling you not to do it. So do with it what you want, but this is some good information to have with you during the test. All right, guys, that completes the FLA portion of the motors. Thanks for watching, and we'll continue on the next video with learning how to size our heaters for our motor protection. Again, thanks for watching. Guys, if you got something out of that, please subscribe, because I'm going to be putting out more tutorial information on how to answer the questions that you're going to see on your Journeyman's test. But for now, thanks again, and be safe out there.